and I want to tell you about Russian larps something. I wanted to make some useful, practical seminar or maybe even workshop, but organizers told me that something most general about Russian larps will be okay. So here we are. And I'm sorry I don't have pictures, let's say technical reasons, but if you then want to see some pictures or some proper talk about anything I will mention, you can come then to me and I will find anything for you. Okay, there are two things I want to tell you in general. And first part is I want to mention some typical things about Russian larps, some features or just typical characteristics. And second, I want to mention some larps which were held in last couple of years that I think are worth to mention and to spread the knowledge about. There will be like two parts, but maybe while talking about typical things, I will still mention these cool larps from my point of view. But the main thing about Russian larps I still have to start from every time is that there are plenty of them. There are a lot of them. Russia is quite a big country, and Moscow is quite a big city I'm living in, and it's almost every year we find out that there is another one larpers community we never heard about and they never heard about us too, and another one, and the larps I'm talking about are mostly of my closer around community, my friends, so still people I've heard about. Of course, there are many others, and some of them are absolutely different. So maybe it's not typical for all Russia, but for something I have seen. But still, I have to find something, and I will. First, in Russia there are not so many serial games, and we almost haven't heard about serial characters. We even don't have any second runs, and of course third runs and so on. In general, in mainstream of Russian larps, we have just one larp and it will burn bright and once and it will gone forever. It is our normal way of thinking about it, and when we first met international community or Nordic larps, we were a little bit surprised. Now, of course, if there are small larps, like chamber larps, there can be reruns, but if it is somewhere in forests or something bigger than 30 people, let's say, usually it's just once, and why then do it again? It was pretty cool, let's do something new. Out of that goes bad things, good things, it's just normal thing for us. But last years I found out that it's some new trend, maybe not trend, but several times I've seen like mini-series. So there were larps that were from the very beginning, it was known that there will be 2 or 3 larps. Maybe, I don't know if you can say series or several episodes. For example, I don't know if you read Glenn Cook's Black Company. It's some dark fantasy. So this year there were 3 games based on this. And next year there will be an interesting, I'd say, example. The game title, The Heart of Hurricane. Organizers want to make a LARP about some post-apocalyptic world in the future. But they also want people to play in some culture they actually felt, experienced, and they know how to get there. So they don't want to just give people this culture of post-apocalyptic future, but they want to give all of us experience of going there. So there will be 2 parts of this game, first in the May and the second one next August. And in the May it will be the game where at some point it will start in the middle of 20th century, and then suddenly time will go faster and faster, and we will live through several generations with this changing culture. So the end of this first game will be the beginning of the second in several months. It is a little bit close to some Nordic LARP workshops, but it's more than workshop. It will be the LARP like this. That's just one, I'd say, example of topic of LARPs where I met several times serial characters. I mean, by serial characters, I mean when some player has a character that he came with from LARP to LARP when these LARPs are not connected actually. And in Russia, for some reason, I don't know why, it is usually just in one small community that likes to play beginning of 20th century in Russia. So something around revolution, civil war, and all this stuff. All these blues for old empire, or something like that. There are several people who have their characters, they have very detailed biography of them, and they can go to some absolutely different LARP, very different organizers, but on the same topic, with this, the same character. And this brings us to the second typical thing for Russian LARPs, and this one was from the very beginning of Russian LARP, and we really do like to play different cultures and history times. Sometimes some specific, some strange, and almost all the time very deep into it, very so the idea of playing this culture is the main thing that makes us feel wow. In 90s, the mainstream was to play crusades and everything around it. Some southern France with the heretical wars, crusades and Jerusalem and all things around, mystical things, historical things. And that was a strong mainstream, like Tolkien at that time and crusades. Later, LARPers decided there are much more nice times and cultures to play in, and we still do love it and do know how to do it. For example, this beginning of 20th century in Russia I mentioned is very much in this stream, but also it can be whatever, Jews in the beginning of first century, every revolution in the human's history, every whatever.
Friends of mine from Tomsk, they did like a Japanese medieval.
Oh, Japanese, it's a super popular trend, so there are a lot of LARPers who like Japan so much, so they have a lot of very also, they usually so very atmospheric and very beautiful games about this. Last couple of years there's some strange new trend in this historical and culture games. It's Mahabharata, you know, old Indian epic stories. For many years, many different organized groups sometimes thought that maybe it would be cool to take this epic story. It's 9 or 10 books of each.
Oh wait, Siddhartha?
No, that's another one.
Oh, okay.
I guess so. Well, there are several Indian old series. One of it is of 10 tomes, another one some other. So about old Indian gods and old Indian heroes, and they are surprisingly quite clear for us because all our culture are, by its roots, go somewhere there. And a couple of years ago, one famous Russian organizer, LARP writer, who began all this crusade insanity at some point, then she began Harry Potter trend, and now she decided, why not India? And everybody was a bit surprised and thought that there will be no enough people for a big game about such a strange setting. No, it was super cool. Now everybody loves India and tries to do more and more games with this topic.
If you
Yeah.
say a big game, in what terms do you talk about big game? How many participants?
Okay, I guess her game was gathered not so many people as she wanted to. But that one was about 300. Big games in general in Russia are, so every year there are couple games more than 1,000. And big games in our sense start from 500. Most of games, so there are not so many, but some like from 300-400, a lot of from 100 to 200, and a lot of
But
less.
but do they then take like the historical background and like be really precise? So we play
Depends.
house this and we play house this.
Depends.
Or they just take like the cultural idea and then make up stuff.
It depends. It can be anyway, this and that and every you can imagine. And there are many people who really do like to play very precise, and the most important to play the soul of this sport, to find something really important for this and play precise in this way. But also there are many examples when we just take some period to make this a picture of this and to use it to do something else. I'll tell you then one, the most, I'd say, bizarre example from this year, and it is a little bit like that. I'll mention it. Okay, another one thing. Okay, we like to win. Russian games are very much about winning. Russian mainstream games. The most games I will mention today are more or less not about this. Because, well, for smart games, it's trend to have some idea, narrative, whatever else. But mainstream is to win in every sense. And even when we realize that there is such a cool thing as play to lose, from my point of view, many Russian players felt it like, play to lose, cool, I can play to lose better than you. And I can It is a little bit like that. It's too deep in our basement somehow. Though many my friends are so much obsessed with the Nordic larps that they took this and they are more Nordic than any Nordics. We better in this too. But the interesting thing about this gamism situation is that I think that I feel that it is connected not just to love to win, but also to love for this world or game or whatever happened to us. So when you have this narrative type of playing, it is like you are a player and this is your character and you think what will be more interesting for this character to happen to. And you construct all the situation to make it the most interesting way. Our feeling, well, mainstream Russian feeling of playing games is that it is cool when not everything depends on you. You will do everything that depends on you, but still there can be some fate, some model, some other player, whatever that can be against you, and it will be some honest competition with the destiny, and then you can fall, you can die, you can be beaten, you can be something else, but you tried to win as hard as you tried. And that's why for mainstream our games, narrative things are not too cool, but it is because it's cool to have surprise from the world. It's cool to do whatever you want and then have real tragedy when you still lose. And something like that. About winning, the biggest game this year, for example, was about Game of Thrones. And organizers who really did want to make the biggest LARP. They had this aim to make big, cool, and they wanted to make a game about power and how power acts to people and something else. It wasn't too interesting from my point of view because idea wasn't too deep or too interesting constructed, but it was very much clear for most of players. We have different parties, not like clans but parties in one society, and we cannot know who is other guy, but we still try to win with our party and something like that. Very much about winning. It was a cage game. And another one thing that is very much connected with this, our love of what happened to us, but also with love to win and with everything else, is that we have usually a lot of mechanics. We love models. We have tons of rules. It's normal to have a lot of rules. Of course, in every normal game there should be mechanic for fighting, for magic, for sex, for medics, for whatever. It sounds sometimes strange because, of course, there are some organizers who do this just because, of course, it should be fighting. How not? Of course, it should be sex and medicine and something else. But on the other hand, when there are organizers with some interesting thoughts in their head, we know how to make these mechanics to work. So we know how to make them to express an idea, to make some strange or interesting things, or how to make more interesting plot of mechanics, actually. What about examples here? For example, last year I made a game with my organizer team. It was quite a big game about some cyberpunkish transhumanistic future. And our main idea was that we want to make a game about how technological future can change humanity and how people can change in this. We didn't want to give some detailed situation like humanity changed like this, look at this. We wanted it to be changed during the game, and in some way we maybe even cannot predict. So we had to put all this system together so it can work, and characters in game could choose what way to choose and do something here, something there, and it will affect to them, and out of it will be built some new humanity, not like the one that was in the beginning. So we had to make, it was our way to make this. So we made a very complex structure of different ways of researching different things. How some researchers researched how to make people more metal with metal construction in them. Some were more about biological things, some virtuality and something like that. And also they could mix it. And our idea was that when you choose something, you will have some side effects, and you will not just change something you were supposed to change, but also something else. So that was very complex structure of model of body, model of mentality, model of this research situation and all this stuff. Maybe it was even too complex in the end, but still that worked like this, and that was the way to express the idea. And also it was the way to make this plot. So we don't actually have to write the road, but still it was not the main thing. We don't have to write plot in advance. Our plot was put in this research situation, and different situations of meeting one type of new human, another one type of new human, and they may be fighting or not fighting, was put in this structure.
Do you sometimes use technology for something like that?
For this we used
Like
a lot of
tablets,
technology.
smartphones?
It was, we made an application, and exactly this game was the most technological of all the times, I'd say, because we to realize this, we had to write an application, and every player had smartphone with this application, and this application there was everything about his character, about his body, about his head, about his bank account, about his social networks, medical stuff, research, blah blah blah, everything. And of course there were several huge things, economics, medicine, and other improvement things for bodies, and not just bodies, virtuality, and so on and so on. Another one game I really do like, and I told about it a lot a couple of years ago, is game Exodus. It was about Jews and their exodus from Egypt. So the idea of the game was that these Jews went out of Egypt and they are going through the desert, and all the game was about this walk. But while they walked, their generation changed, and every player, every character lived for not so long time, about 6 hours more or less. And that was super simple but super working construction of it. How everybody was born, lived, died, and then again, and then again. And through this, there was a super interesting and precise story of all the nation as the main character. Not the character of yourself, but how all the nation comes through everything. I really do want to rerun this particular game, because I played it, I really liked it, and I think it is rerunnable. I want to make it internationally, maybe even in Germany, if we'll find a venue. So if it will be like this, you all are invited, of course. I think Russian game about Jews in Germany is the perfect. It cannot not work. In English, of course. Well, and smaller things about this. First, we entered this one. The thing I told a lot about last year is we play death a lot, much more than Germans, as far as I understood. And it also comes of this our one run and nothing else, and we like this to happen to us, and we like it to be dramatic but in a real way. So we cannot see how to play without a lot of death in games. It's the main thing, it's the most dramatic, it's the most cool, and we know how to make a lot of different rules of dying, killing, whatever. Killing is not so interesting for me, but dying sometimes is. For example, once I played a game where it was the rule that you can be killed, but you will not die 1 hour after that. So you know you will die, your killer knows you will die, but still you have this 1 hour, and you can tell anybody about whatever, or you can do whatever to a killer or something else. And suddenly, strange for some Russian players, but still it didn't kill the game, but gave us even more game. For example, my killer didn't want me to tell anything about this killing, so she took me deep in the forest, and then we had a perfect 1 hour game, 1-to-1. I will not tell you everything about it. Also, we have very a huge culture of how to play after death. Because when you have some deaths, of course you have some players that are there on the venue after it. And first it started, of course, with just super simple places with some organizer who sit there and says, you should sit here for 4 hours, but if you make some fire for me, you can sit here 3 hours. Not so interesting. But then Russian LARP writers realized it's a cool place to play also. Or, if not play, then to make something interesting to a player. So, almost at every our game, we have something that happens to player or character somehow after death. Sometimes it's character has some experience then. Sometimes it's some way of talking with the player about what happened to him, his character, whatever. There are tons of different, very interesting ways, and well, I can just take another one talk and tell about this all that hour that will be not it. The super simple, of course, is to make just a postmodern thing like in some religions. In Game of China, you can meet this heaven's, what is it? Bureaucracy, heaven's bureaucracy in China mythology. If there is a Christianic thing, you can meet some Christianic, I don't know, hell, heaven, whatever. On that one game, when I set 1 hour with my killer, it was a game about ancient Rome, and I was an Eastern slave. So I met my Eastern gods. Oh, they were glad about me. I had something to tell. Okay. And one more minor thing. I'm not sure if it is close or not so close to your games, but it's usually not close to international, so I want to mention it. Almost always in mainstream, there is not like organizer gives you a character and that's it. And usually it's not like you come up with character and that's it. Usually it's some mix of it. So organizer comes up with something, and then you say, no, this is not perfect, I want more story like this, like that, and by the way, your rules of this are not so perfect for my character, I don't know how I can play this at all. And then it's half a year of discussing. What is better for this character, this team, that character, maybe some another one character, and all this stuff.
Even for your big games?
Yes, that's the thing.
That's crazy.
So this one, last time when I made this transhumanistic game, that was actually quite big and quite not so easy constructed world as well. We had also talked to all these people because they had their own ideas. Yes, that's crazy. Sometimes there are games when organizer says, this will be your character and that's it, or do just this and just believe me. But usually it's not mainstream, and quite often it's something experimental.
In Germany, most, like in the mainstream, everybody comes up with their own characters. Like
Lucky you! Somebody told me that German organizers are quite lazy in this.
No, it's just
In this sense.
It has just come in, like slowly coming into the German LARPing culture, and it has its dangers because, like, let's say there's people who play normal characters, but then some people have megalomaniac ideas of what their character is gonna be, and then there's people playing a peasant and a player playing Superman. So
we cannot afford this. They have to fight, and they have to have this fair competition, and they have to know who will have 1 hit and who will have 10 hits and why. So it's not so easy, unfortunately. And then some people pretend that they are not winners, they just want an interesting game. Some knows very well that they want to win, or they don't need to win and they want something else. But usually many of our players are quite conscious about it, and they can come to organizers and say very clear, I want to play this and that, and I see your mechanics about this. And with our weapons we cannot play this. Please rewrite your mechanics for my guys, or we will go away from your game. Never mind. Let me tell you about some games of last couple of years that I think are worth to mention. One of the most strange, and I think from some point of view it's also about love to play culture, but not just this. This spring, some larp group invited people, not so many. It was, I'm not sure, maybe 30, 40, 50, something like that, to play in Harry Potter setting. It was supposed to be in Harry Potter setting, but somewhere first half of 20th century, I'm not sure, or the end of First World War or the beginning of the Second. But the characters should be not muggles, but all they are wizards, and all they are separated from this war situation. So the setting of the game, they came to some place in Europe to listen for some magic opera. And this is the setting of this moment. So some of them are Grindelwald is also there, but not in the LARP situation, but somewhere else. And it was supposed to be the game about real magic and what is real magic in this world, and about war where brother kills brother, something like that. So people came there in all these Harry Potter characters, suits, costumes, spells. Because of course, if you go to Harry Potter LARP, you have to have mechanic for spells, and you have to learn them, and they are not so easy. It's we have this very popular system like fencing violence. I like it because it lets me or other girls who don't like to be beaten by this stuff to fence also, but still. So they played about one evening. All these, and then suddenly, I'm not quite sure how it happened because I wasn't there, but it was quite harsh. The setting changed, and suddenly they got soldier forms and 6 pages of new rules, and they are on the war, First World War. Some of them are Germans, some of them are British guys. One of them is young John Tolkien. Some of them are a little bit French guys. Well, the title of this game was, what is it again in German?
I'm not sure. So there's Spirited Away, I think.
No. The Western Front.
Yeah.
Yes, this one. So this was the title of the game, but we thought it was some modernistic something. No, suddenly they are there, and this very realistic, dark, cold. It's April, Russia, snow, ice, soldier uniforms, and also they got an envelope for every character. So in every envelope there were 3 hints, and 1 trigger. So it was supposed that one by one, every player will open some of these hints that should help his or her character be more deep or bright or whatever. They started opening it at some point, and that's a war. First World War, everything is very bad. Not so nice, cold, very tragic. And they opened some of these hints, and some of them started to realize something, and then they went one by one to the last one. And in the last one, that was set very clear that this character from Silmarillion Tolkien's, so every character was corresponded to one of Silmarillion's characters. And one by one, they understood that you're Finrod, she's Galadriel, he's someone else. And as far as I understood, all of players who were there somehow were really deep involved in all this. Because, well, to know Tolkien is some basement of our LARP culture, so most of us read it and a lot of us know it very well. Not me, unfortunately. I feel some sadness knowing that if I was at that game, I wouldn't understand it so deeply, because it wasn't this culture corresponding to me. Like, I know that Finrod would do in this situation the same I just did to young John Tolkien. So, in the end, they realized that all this game had 3 different levels. First of them, some fictional something. Second, very realistic, very dramatic, very, well, you can touch it. And third, high epic. Somehow they were all about the same idea. And somehow, well, there were, I guess, 2 players who couldn't get it and who went away after the first one part was over. But all the others felt all this in such deep levels and thought about this on different levels and had all these wow surprise things. Like, and suddenly I realized this one is my brother, I don't know, elfish name. And of course it's very much about Tolkien stuff on his on whose grave, you know, it's not Tolkien or whatever, just Beren. And on his wife's grave is not anything but Luthien. So it was about this. What else did I want to mention? Another one game about very much about culture also, but also in some strange point of view. Another game about Jews and Romans. The game The Great War. The setting beginning of 1st century, 36 or 37, something that year, something like that. War between Jews and Romans, and some Greeks are also there, and all this about ideas of that time, philosophy at that time, and all this stuff. I told you, historical culture, we like this. But the girl who did this game, she lives now in Israel, and she thinks a lot about all this and about mostly about radicalization. She even has a super cool talk about radicalization she heard several times on our conventions. How it works, how you can play it, and how it works in real life. It's a pity that on Mittelpunkt they didn't take this, because it's very cool. And she, like, thinking about it, she made this game, well, about it. The strange thing of atmosphere and mechanic was that she took this ancient story and ancient ideas, let's say ancient, but all the decoration was modern. So they had modern uniforms, they had striped wall guns, they had phones with telegram channels, and all this old Greek philosophy was spread through these telegram channels, and Jewish philosophy and Romance philosophy and all this stuff. And the very nice, the main mechanic actually that should work for this radicalization thing is this. There was a lot of war and a lot of death, of course, but it was supposed that every player comes up with several close characters to his or her character. And every time when in some fighting she was, for example, shot or killed anyhow else, there were a lot of ways to die there, it was supposed that not his or her character was killed, but someone who stood next to her. For example, friend, brother, sister, whomever. And out of that, the main character was still alive, but had another one story how the closest someone just was killed right next to her. And it happened that it actually was a very good mechanic, actually, way to show how radicalization works. And in the end, even very civil pacifists in the beginning characters were absolutely not so far from war characters anymore. This, that. Okay, the harshest thing in real life, I'd say, about Russian LARP writer, I really saw it. One friend of mine, very good, smart, nice LARP organizer, died several years ago. It itself was quite strange death, because he was a man with one leg, and he came to Cuba, and there some truck hit him. Crazy. But now, it was about 3 years ago or so, he made a game. So before he was killed, he started to write a game, and he told some people about it, so there were some first rules, something like that. After that, several of his friends, and not just friends, some people who were quite far from him also, took his ideas and still did this game. And I went there, and it was good. It was maybe not the same he would do, but still. But after the game, I found out a very strange thing, that at least 3 of organizers of this game were not so close friends of him, but after his death, they saw him in a dream. So he came to them in their dream and told them one by one, "You know, this game I wrote, you should do this. You should do this." And they were so impressed that they really found each other, and they were not friends also. And really did this. I'm sorry, that's true story. That was also a game about beginning of century in Russia. It was of 2 parts. It was based on Nabokov and Gazdanov stories, novels. So first part was in 1914. The second part was in 1934 in Paris. So it was about people who had to go away from Russia and how they lived through this and what was this about. It was a good one game in the end, and well, thank you, my friend.
Maybe his ghost went into the dreams. Like maybe he still had this mission that he had to finish this game.
He did it. We all saw it. Well, in general, it's about it I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want, you can ask Ben more.
We'll have to run.
Quick question. What would happen if you organize a LARP with few or no rules? Would anybody attend it?
Yes, of course, but depends on what size of game you want to do. Actually, it was the main lesson I've got on this one, my game about future. You don't have to wait that a lot of people, will be easy to have your something strange or experimental things. So more experimental things you want to come with, less smaller game it should be to make it real. So I made quite experimental game for 500 people or 600 people.
Smart.
Not everything works, I'd say. Well, I was not so good working after that. But in general, yes, you can do all the strange things, but then you had to be very precise about it. For example, once we had a game where organizers told us, you know nothing about your characters. And the beginning of all the story is you all are waking up in some spaceship. You have no idea what the spaceship is, who you are, what is going on, what is going to happen. For Russian larpers, it's harsh. Or another one very close to this situation when organizers told us it will be a game about small city in 70s in USA, and you all your characters will start in the train that goes to this city. You never have been there. For some reason, your character is going to go there. So we can discuss your character, but you don't know about other characters and you are not acquainted to them. Just believe us. It will be something, just believe us. Also, very difficult for Russian players.
Why?
Because you cannot control. Will I have something to play in or not?
Okay.
Do Russian labs often use NPCs or very little?
Yes. Well, quite amount. Depends on game modes. Usually we do, but depends on what do we need.
Okay.
It's very close to mechanics. So you come up with the idea and then you try to find out how to realize it better.
Okay.